Happy Friday, sister friends. Welcome back to the show. Today we are continuing with part 2 of our conversation with Susan Fleming. If you remember, Susan is a co-author of a #1 bestseller, Just Say No, 14 Transformational Keys to Set Healthy Boundaries in Business and Relationships. She's the founder and CEO of Heaven to Earth LLC. And she works to equip leaders to multiply life without burning out in the process. And today we're continuing our conversation around what it means to function from a place of God's rest and in partnership with Him, rather than with a mindset of performance and hustle and grind. Welcome to the Grace-Filled Leader Podcast. Do you want better work-life balance? Do you get stuck in patterns of perfectionism and people-pleasing? Have you always been an overachiever, but never really feel good enough, no matter how much outward success you achieve? Hi, I'm Tanya, a wife, mom, leader, Christian life coach, and Jesus lover. For most of my life, I tried to find worthiness through achievement, but no matter how hard I worked or how much I achieved, I never felt like I was enough. I was left burned out, empty, and exhausted. I had no time or energy for myself or my family. I needed balance. I needed peace. I finally started to live like an unconditionally loved daughter of the King, saved by grace. This faith-led podcast will teach you self-care routines and practical leadership strategies to help you navigate life and leadership. If you're ready to stop people-pleasing and start living and leading God's way, this podcast is for you. Unbutton your blazers and roll up your sleeves, sister friends. It's time to get after it. Making the 12-inch journey from here, my head to my heart, took me the better part of 49 years to actually feel and walk with that, what that really means, and the freedom that comes that's so inexplicable. I mean, yeah, it's hard to explain, but you just want every single person to feel that and experience it. And you never, ever, ever, ever want to go back to not feeling it,
Yeah.
It almost becomes terrifying because I know my patterns in history of, having periods in my life where usually it's been, kind of some, I've had 3 things that were major. Like 10 years ago, I got diagnosed with breast cancer. When my daughter graduated from high school, for whatever, that was really hard. And then COVID and leading through COVID work. So it was kind of these big things that, oh, poof, Tanya, you don't have control. And now desperately I'm seeking the Lord. And then you feel, when you finally surrender and you feel that peace and that presence. I also know that I, have periods of getting complacent and getting more distant. And this time I feel like I just don't ever want to do that. I don't want to make that mistake again. I want to live in the freedom that comes with walking in the Spirit. Sorry, that was a lot of words, but when you said all that, I just could feel the energy. I get so excited because I know what you're saying, and I just want more of it, and I want more people to feel that.
Well, it's like you said, it's about control, right? We want the control. We want to have the control of everything all the time.
Yes.
I was such a micromanager, right? Yes. I was constantly just like we were saying at the beginning, as a mom, you get programmed to I've got to plan all the things for everybody in the house, right? And you just kind of get in that mode of micromanaging. Or if you're at the office and you're over people,
yes,
it's hard to just take your hands off of it and say, I'm going to trust you to do your job, or I'm going to trust you to do what I've asked you to do, right? And so that's a lot of what it is, even with God, right? I'm going to trust your word. I'm going to trust that you're actually going to do what you have said you're going to do.
Right.
And that is really, really hard.
Yes. Because we do a lot of yes, but
kind of like, well, but
yeah. Yeah. Or you'll do it, let him have a few things, but then you're like, oh, but I'm going to keep this one over here.
Yeah. Right. So tell me how that's looked for you, how you function in your business, depending on entrusting God and functioning from God's rest. How does that look different than it looked when you said you kind of slid off the bed, and how you were functioning then when you just were like, I can't do it this way anymore?
Yeah. So I was just following everybody else.
Yeah.
Right? Like whoever was hot at the moment, I'm going to go do what she says to do. I'm going to try it her way. And then somebody else would pop up and, oh, well, this really isn't working. So I'm going to go try this thing over here. And it was just constant trying to figure things out for myself, trying to do all the things, trying to, be everywhere, posting online everywhere, getting on all the podcasts and doing all the summits and whatever, like just trying to be everywhere all the time, to be visible in front of people.
Yes.
And through that process of him showing me that's performance, and instead of looking at everybody else, I just want you to look at me. Right? Seek first the kingdom. He brings me back to that a lot. And so you start filtering decisions through, is this a good thing, a better thing, or a God thing?
Oh, yeah.
Right? So when you ask yourself that question, or you ask him that question, and you go and you say, Lord, is this the best thing for me right now? Is this something I need to do? Right? Then it's a whole lot easier when you have an opportunity to do something. It's easier to make that decision and say yes or no.
Right.
Right? You don't feel that pressure to say yes to everything.
Right.
Right. And I was saying yes to everything.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to let anybody down. I didn't want to disappoint anybody. I didn't want it to appear that I couldn't do everything on my own.
Right. You don't want to miss a potential opportunity or FOMO, I guess.
Yeah. So it looks very different now. Every morning I start the day with the Lord. We spend some time together. And then at some point I'll get at my calendar and say, this is what I have on here today. Is there anything that needs to come off? Is there anything that needs to go on? And I don't know that he's ever added anything.
Well, that's refreshing.
Yeah. There's usually take stuff off and I'll be like, but really, I want to work on that today, or whatever it is. But he's so just slowly just stripping things away. And I feel like that's a harsh word because it doesn't feel like a pulling, right? Because when we keep our hands open, it goes easy. So it's that surrendering, keeping your hands open and saying, Lord, what do you want to do with this today? Right? And if he wants to take it, then it's not a hard thing to let go of because your hands are already open. So it's really been learning when he takes stuff off my calendar, there's a reason, and I can trust that he is doing the very best for me.
Yes. So how has that discernment matured? So, because when I think about myself and a lot of people I know, we're so, in our performance-driven minds, we're so in our own head and controlling and problem solving and figuring it out that there's so much noise in our head. At least at first, I think it's difficult for us to hear God. Or so when you say God took this off my calendar, or God, how has that evolved? How do you know God's taking it off your calendar? I don't know if I'm making sense, but essentially, how have you come to better discern what is God adding or taking away? And has it been a progression just with practice? Does that make sense?
Yeah. There's definitely a progression because you're learning.
Yeah.
You're learning and he gives you grace for that and opportunities to practice that. And for me, it was getting more information about the prophetic and how God speaks, because I think I think kind of the general idea of the prophetic is that you're going to have visions or you're going to hear something. For me, it's more of a knowing.
Yeah, like an intuitive sort of thing.
Yeah. Like there's just a knowing, and I have peace. Like it's just a peace that you're like, that's got to be God, because that doesn't feel natural,
Right.
So it's been learning about the prophetic, learning different ways that he speaks, and knowing that everybody can hear from him. So even when I'm saying hear, it may not be an audible hearing.
Right.
Like it could be, there have been times where I went through, let me back up. So I went through this activation where I was opening all of my senses. So one by one, I went through and was like, okay, Holy Spirit, I activate my sense of smell. Will you, allow me to smell something that's not in the room?
Really? Oh,
Yeah.
this is interesting.
And so I went through all the different senses, right? And so like, can I taste something? Will you allow me, I want to activate that. Can I taste something that I know I haven't eaten today? So doing different things like that helped me to kind of figure out which one of those is the strongest. Which one of my senses was it easier to kind of hear or, quote hear.
Yeah.
Because I can't say that I've ever actually heard God.
Right. No.
Yeah. Right. It's just,
right.
There's
it's
a knowing.
Feeling. Yeah.
For some people there's feeling. There could be like, I can feel the atmosphere. When I walk into a room, I can feel it. I can tell you what's about to go down, good or bad.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, ooh, do I want to go in there today? So that's interesting when when you're working in an office. But so it was just kind of going through different prophetic activations and seeing like, where am I strong and what do I need to develop? So that was kind of the process I went through. Does that answer your question?
It does. It's very intriguing. So I'll probably be doing more research. For me, I guess it's that the knowing is a better word. I like that you use that knowing, I want to say feeling, but it really is, knowing feels like a better word. When I think about, I get myself all confused because I let my own voice and probably the enemy's voice creep in, where I'm like, oh, I'm pretty sure, I just have this knowing or this pull, and I think God's persistent too. Sometimes it's like, okay, you're not listening too well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's just, it becomes unavoidable. Like, okay, no, this is recurring, but it's this gut sort of pulling knowing. Yeah. And I just it's like, I get so hungry to have that become clearer and clearer and clearer. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And it's just practice. It's really that simple. Just asking him different things and just noticing, if you can get in a quiet place, because typically when you're first starting, you want to be somewhere quiet where you can be intentionally, practicing. And then the more you do it, you can do it easier, and you can do it in crowded places, and it's not, a big deal. You get used to it. But initially, just again, going back to just being with him, and even asking him, will you show me different things about myself? Or will you show me, like, how are you speaking to me the most? What should I be looking out for? And then just notice. Do you feel something in your body, or do you smell something, or like, what happens when you ask those questions? And I think so often we tune that stuff out.
Yeah, we don't stop long enough to notice.
Yeah. So it's a lot of noticing for sure in the beginning. Have to be really intentional about it, but it's just practicing those things.
So have you experienced, tell me this, like, have you experienced this at all as you've grown and gone along this journey for yourself of moving more toward functioning from a place of God's rest and partnership and, not wearing the badge of busy? have you experienced where other people in your life just aren't on the same journey, or they're certainly in a different place? And how do you handle that? You know what I mean? With kind of grace and love. I struggle sometimes when you're really on a different path or a different place, and you so badly want, especially those closest to you and that you deeply, deeply love, you want them to experience something different than they're experiencing. And they are maybe going way more down the performance road all the time.
Yeah.
And you don't want to be like, well, I think you really need to, you don't want to shut people down. How have you handled that, whether it's in your marriage or friends, family, whomever? Have you encountered that, and how have you handled it?
Yeah. So there's layers to that.
Yeah.
Right. So when we get in those situations, first of all, just asking yourself, why is this important to me?
Mm-hmm.
Is it really about me, or is it about the other person?
Right. Yeah. Your intention. Yeah.
Right. Like, because I think so many times we're like, we want to change other people, and they're like, they don't want to,
Mm-hmm.
and so then you have to come back to yourself and go, why is it so important to me that person behave differently, or whatever it is? And so looking at your motives, right? Is there people pleasing going on? Are you trying to, is it something in you that needs work that is reflecting in that other person? Right? And we deflect that, and we're like, no, let me focus on you. And there's really stuff going on with us. So I think there's definitely layers to that. I can think of times with my husband where I've had those hard conversations and then realized, oh, this is really about me. Like, I'm trying to take control back here.
Well, I think in my case, it's more like because of, I guess maybe I'm thinking of it more that there's maybe more an expectation on their part toward performance, like that it's a judgment on me if I'm not seeking that, do you know what I'm saying? Like, well, let's just take husband, since we're talking. My husband is very driven, performance driven, like, a 40-hour week is a part-time job sort of person. And I want him to, he doesn't slow down long enough to realize that he's not getting more joy from functioning from that place, but he knows nothing different. And he almost has a judgment toward others who don't have the same mindset. So then when you're on a different path and you're starting to realize, God values work and he created us to work. I believe that. However, it's not, he also created us to rest in him. So then kind of communicating that, or I guess have that being seen as, and maybe that, I guess that is people pleasing. If I'm feeling like, well, okay, he's just going to see me as lazy. If I'm starting to set boundaries around my rest time, you know what I mean? Like, just, it's seen as, well, I'm not helping enough. So then it says something about me more so than him. So sorry, I'm now like, now you're giving, now you're
just letting you process.
I'm verbally processing. I think that's been the hardest part, is I think mostly I want him to experience something different, because I know what it feels like to actually function a little bit differently. But also I want it to be okay for me to stay on the path that I'm on. And not feel like I'm somehow failing him, I think, as a wife, or because his expectations are very different in terms of what he values from a work performance perspective.
So you could have a conversation with him that just gets clear on expectations. Right? What are your expectations of me within the household? And just see what he says. Because a lot of times when we ask people that question, they're really not expecting us to do all the things that we do.
Well, true. How much do we put on ourselves?
Right. We put it on ourselves. And it's very eye-opening when you actually ask somebody and they're like, I don't expect you to do that. Why would you think that?
True.
So,
good point.
You could have that conversation for sure. But the other thing I would say is God just, in that moment, in that encounter of seeing him as my husband, it shifted something in me to where I was able to just release my husband and expectations that I had put on him that I didn't realize.
Sure.
That there were needs I was expecting him to meet that he just can't,
Yes,
and so
true.
getting into that place of I'm going to God first.
Yes.
I'm going to him to meet all the needs first. My husband is a bonus.
Yes.
Right. So if he chooses to do something different than what I'm doing, I don't feel any kind of that anymore. Like, that's on him, right?
Yeah.
Like, he's not my responsibility. I'm responsible for me. That's it. I can't change anybody else. So there were some conversations that happened initially. And like I said, I realized it was more about me than him. And once that happened, then it was easy for me to go, okay, God, he's yours. Like, I'm going to trust that you're going to show him the way.
Yes.
You'll use what you use to get his attention. Maybe that's me. Maybe it's something else. Right. And I can say that just in him seeing changes I've made, he started asking questions. So a lot of times things can change without us even saying anything.
Right. And really praying over it. Like, I thought of that. There's a book, The Praying Wife, where, lately that's more been okay, obviously, God, I can't change. Like you said, I can't change anyone other than, me. And, he's capable of immeasurably more than we can ask or imagine. So it's more, like you said, that's a beautiful way to say it, releasing him to the Lord. I have to allow him to be on God's timeline and whatever work, but certainly can be praying.
Yeah.
I think you just want that peace. You just want that peace for other people, I guess, just the.
Yeah. Well, it's like you said, when you feel that freedom, you want everybody to know what that feels like.
Yes.
Because it's so different. And it does. That's why that's my whole message. Wherever I go, whatever I speak about, I'm talking about rest, because I think everybody on the planet needs to know, right? I've become so passionate about it because I've lived it. I've experienced it, right? It's not something I read about in a book and I'm like, oh, well, go teach on that. You can't teach it, right? You have to experience God in a different way to understand what his rest feels like.
Right. Well, and then that's where I think I didn't finish my sentence before, but that idea of we get it backwards in terms of functioning like we need to be pleasing, we need to please God, when really, like you said, we need to receive his love, receive that identity that we have in him. And when you truly receive it and fill that cup first, when he does, I should say, then it's a natural desire to be pleasing, because of, instead of trying to earn it, receive first, and only from that place can you truly give it. And you just want to, you feel less and less comfortable being, living in the flesh, or it just feels more aversive to not live in a way that seeks to build relationship or seeks to be pleasing to him, really more from what's coming from the inside out.
Yeah, because it's no longer about obligation.
Right.
You're doing it because you want to do it. You're doing things for him because you love him and you know how much he loves you. Whereas before, for me, it was absolutely about obligation. I was trying to check off a list. I read my Bible today, check.
Right.
I prayed today, check. That's what it was. It was obligation, because I thought he's going to be mad at me if I don't do these things, right? Like, that's what I've been told in church. This is how you be a good daughter. You do X, Y, Z. And if you don't, well, then you're not going to get the blessing. And that's just not how it works.
Right.
Would you do that to your kids?
No.
Right? Like, and that's another thing for
me. But in a way we do, because of how we live, like, I think now I have so many regrets about having functioned and lived that way for so long and lived out of, fear. I've let fear, just be too much a part of my life, and that achievement, performance based. And now I just want to rewind things like, oh, I don't want my kids to, I see some of those patterns already, especially in my daughter. And I just want to sort of rewind it and say, oh, gosh, I've just learned so much. I wish I would have done it differently for her to see something different when she was growing up.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. But it's not too late.
No.
It's never too late, right?
No.
We can always talk to our kids, no matter how old they get, they will always be our kids.
Yes.
And we can share. I've been able to share with mine, and it's been the biggest blessing. When my 16-year-old comes to me and he says, Mom, like there's just something different. Something has happened.
Oh, how wonderful. Well, that makes me want to cry. Like that's the biggest.
Yeah, it does. It does. And, so that opens the door for questions and for conversation and for, let me tell you about the God I know now, and being able to, I've gone back and apologized for things, that they probably don't even remember.
Right. I know.
They say they don't remember. But knowing what I know about psychology, I'm like, it's stored somewhere in your body, so we're going to address it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just being able to do that, to apologize and explain, but this is what I know now, and teaching them things that they can do different, because that is, yes, my oldest is very much an elder child, very much that type A, do all the things. And I'm like, oh, I can just see it in him. I can see myself, and I'm like, okay, we're going to cut this off. We're going to stop this.
Yeah.
So it's been such a blessing to just be able to go back to him and have that conversation of like, the grades just aren't that important. Like he's putting so much pressure on himself to have all A's and do the things. And like, that's just performance. It's performance. I'm not grading you. I just want you to do the best you can do. If that's an A, fine. If that's a C, fine. And he's like, what? I can't make a C. Like,
I know. It was devastating the first time my daughter got a B. Even for us, that's the thing, is like, we're sort of like, oh, I didn't get any B's. Like I struggle, like, Lord, how do I, because I believe, like you said, if they're capable of an A, they should strive for an A. And you know what I mean? We should use the gifts we're blessed with, but with the right mindset and for the right reason. Like you said, it isn't about, your world shouldn't fall apart if you get a B plus. And if, you did your best, that's,
So it's just been totally different. It's changed my business, my marriage, my parenting, like really probably every relationship, whether it's family or friends or whatever. I'm a different person. And they notice, and that opens the door for me to share what God's done.
When they want what you have, like that's the biggest and best way to sort of witness to.
Because that's the gospel.
Right.
Like,
exactly.
It's that simple. God loves you. Like, but this is how you can actually experience it, right? And not just have it as head knowledge.
Right.
Let me walk you through this, and we'll, do that exercise of just being with him, just sitting there. And it's amazing every single time. It's so amazing because he never does. I've never seen him do the same thing twice.
Really?
Like with each,
and he never leaves it empty. Like, okay, God, just show up today. Like he always gives you something.
Yeah, and it's so just spot on to whatever that person needs in that moment. It's just perfect every time. He's so gracious and loving, and it's just like you said. Like I want everybody to experience this. So. There's something practical for y'all to take away today, to spend some time with the Lord.
Yes, I was going to say, so to the woman that doesn't know where to start, you would say, just start by just being quiet with the Lord. Just be. Just
be. And even if it's 10 seconds, right? It'll grow. It'll grow, because he will show up for you in the exact way that you need it.
Yeah.
I just would keep reiterating, that he loves you.
Yeah.
And being able to experience that is so very different. If you'll just take a minute out of your day today to just stop and just be still and quiet with him. And, you may not make it a whole minute, and that's totally fine.
Right.
But do what
he
you
does in
can.
that minute. Yeah.
Yeah. Just start where you're at. That's the beauty of it. There's no shame or condemnation in like, oh, I can't sit here quiet for 30 minutes.
Right.
It's okay. It's okay. I promise. He's just happy that you're trying. So if it's 5 seconds, go for it.
Yes, I love that. So where can our listeners find you? They want to hear more of Susan. Where can they go?
Yeah. So my website is Earth LLC.com. And that's pretty much the hub for everything. You can find my book there, my YouTube channel is there, my podcast is there. The YouTube channel and the podcast both have the same name. It's Faith First Business.
Okay.
So you could look that up, or like I said, everything is there on the main website. I try to keep everything in one place so you can find all the links to everything there.
Wonderful. Well, I thank you so, so much for joining me today and having this conversation. And thank you for your grace when I start to go down the help me with my husband road. No. I'll have to listen back. Maybe I need to edit that out. He doesn't listen anyway, I'm pretty sure.
Somebody needs that. Somebody needs that. I believe it, because we're all dealing with our husbands.
Yeah, amen to that. God's got jokes. That's all I have to say about that topic.
That's right. He does.
Susan, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been such a just beautiful conversation. It's been so nice to just talk and get to know you and be here and serve your audience.
I pray this episode blessed you, spoke to you, or encouraged you in some way. If so, please share it with a friend and head on over to Apple Podcasts to leave me a review. That's the only way for me to know if you're enjoying the show. Nothing blesses me more than to hear from you. Also, come on over to our free Facebook community. This is a great place for us to support one another on our faith and leadership journeys. You can find the link to the group in the show notes or go to gracefilledleader.com/community. If you have questions or content ideas for the show, please send me a message on SpeakPipe or via email. Go to gracefilledleader.com/contact and leave a written or voice recorded message. I would love to know how I can best serve you on the podcast. Now to Him who can do immeasurably more than we can ask or imagine, according to His power that is at work within us. Ephesians 3, verse 20. Until next time, my friends, God bless.